Hello, everyone. I'm excited to be able to introduce Byron Parson to you. Byron Parson has generously written an article in my book Sparkle, and his the A in Sparkle stands for appreciation, and Byron is an expert in appreciation. So he is going to tell us first. He's going to kind of introduce himself because he's got multiple
I
expertise.
would love to. As Pam said, I'm Byron Parson. I've been a Christ follower for 42 years.
Mhm.
I'm married to my beautiful wife, Lori. We've been married for 38 years and have two kids, Blake, who is married and has a son, Benjamin, and my daughter, Nina. And we just are just a happy family, just, trying to appreciate each other. It's so funny. My daughter wants for her graduation, actually for her birthday that came around to graduation, she said, "What I want is for each family member to make a little craft of an
Mm.
appreciation moment with
Wow.
me so that I can put in my new apartment and hang on the walls." And so, yeah, that whole idea of appreciation has kind of become a family thing. I work in a couple different capacities. I work as a project manager, largely in IT, but I also work, I guess maybe the best title would be a kind of a spiritual director trainer. And so I have some written material and I facilitate a series called Forming that I didn't write, but it's just an excellent introduction to spiritual formation. And we'll be publishing shortly a workbook for abiding, which is kind of the next step. Forming is a great introduction, and abiding is more of an in-depth walking it out and really getting a rhythm in life. So
Thank
that kind of takes up my time these days, along with a couple other things.
Yes, and I am super grateful for Byron because he's the one who taught me about appreciation moments. So, Byron, in your article, you talked about appreciation moments as a way of activating relational circuits. Can you share what led you to explore appreciation and how it has impacted your relationship with God and others?
Sure, sure. Fortunately, I wasn't necessarily on the appreciation track, but I had been introduced to a book called Forming, and then that introduced me to a series and some other colleagues in different areas of spiritual research. And
Mhm.
in following them, I was in this journey group, and we talked about appreciation moments, and that's kind of when I learned about that whole dynamic, how when we are in an appreciation moment, when we're in that state of appreciation, that something even happens with our brains and our neurology, that we're in a more cooperative, welcoming, open, handed, caring what another person thinks, willing to negotiate kind of space. And that was just a very fascinating thing for me to kind of dabble into. And as I took the course and was a part of the journey group and started facilitating, I found myself doing appreciation moments more and more. And I just found that um, on the one hand, I can feel the effect that it's having on me. But even if I don't feel like it's having an effect on me, I can see that somehow I'm coming across differently and people are responding to me
Yeah,
differently than they had before.
yeah,
So I was glad to stumble across it and to be in a space where I could practice it more and more,
yeah,
maybe more than the average person who just does one journey group.
yeah.
And so I really started to see the benefits for me personally.
Yes, and thank you so much for being willing to share it with the world and share it in my book. So, in the article, you also shared a personal story about how you practiced appreciation. You have your story of Consider the Birds, that was so powerful. Could you share how that experience helped you understand God's provision in a new way? Because, like you said, we need to store appreciation moments so that we can access those relational circuits. Our world needs people who are present, who are able to be curious, who are able to access and move out of that survival brain. So, tell us about your personal story and how do you how do you do that? You know, because in the book you shared about that, consider the birds, but I'm sure you have many more.
I do, yes. Yes. I've practiced it in a number of ways. That Consider the Birds was a hike but I was on in this little mountain valley area just north of me in the Pasadena area. And, I could not get to that on a daily basis. And so sometimes I'll partner with a friend and we'll just call each other in the mornings before
Mhm.
work and just take 5 or 10 minutes and each share an appreciation moment or two with each
Yeah.
other. And I find being able to say it out loud to another person
Mm.
and to be heard and received
Yeah.
just takes it to a whole nother level. And then me
Yeah.
hearing their story becomes a resource. So I
Yeah.
have my own appreciation stories, and then I add to that their appreciation stories. And
Yeah.
sometimes their appreciation stories are in realms and in areas I would never travel, I would never experience, but
Yeah.
now it's a part of me, and I can call upon that when I need it.
Absolutely. And that's why appreciation is a step to accessing joy. And like you shared that practice, and you have so many practices like that. So before we talk about the practices, let's dive a little deep into the science and spirituality, because you did mention the cingulate cortex and its role in fostering relational engagement. I know that is a lot of scientific terms there. So how can we blend this neuroscience and spirituality to help the listeners and our readers of the book deepen their relationship with God and the people around them?
Yeah, that's a great question, Pam. I think because some people, when they hear the brain science, they think,
Hmm.
"Oh, I just want to be spiritual. What does the Bible have to say?" And others, they love the marriage of the two.
Hmm.
When I think about the passages that talk about God inhabits the praises of His people, it seems to be one of those scriptures that talk about the role of praise and experiencing the presence of God, or to enter his gates with thanksgiving and his courts with praise. Another very similar concept. Also, I think it's more of a New Testament scripture where I think James talks about every good and perfect gift comes
Hmm.
from the
Yes.
Father of the heavenly lights. And so there's this marriage between things that we consider to be good, things that we think are praiseworthy, things that we would naturally give thanks for, and this awareness of God, the presence of God, and our being able to experience it and be cognitively, consciously aware of that.
Yeah.
So those things marry together for me.
Yeah. In the book, you outline some how do we create those appreciation moments, and that's really profound. So can you walk our listeners through those steps and explain how they can use it in their daily lives to foster this joy and relational intimacy with God and with each other?
Oh, absolutely. I think, first of all, when I think of an appreciation moment, I think about it as something different than just what I'm grateful for.
Mhm.
So when I wake up, I'm grateful to have a roof over my head. I'm grateful for the lights and I'm grateful for many things. But I wouldn't necessarily call that an appreciation moment for me because it hasn't touched me at a visceral level. And when I think of it about appreciation moment, it's an experience that we've had, something in our past where we knew this was a place of beauty or specialness or love or belonging, but it wasn't just a conscious thing. It was
Mhm.
something that we felt. Either we felt flushed in the face, or
Mhm.
we felt a warmth in our chest, or we felt a sense of openness or an expansion. So appreciation is one of those things that makes it through all of our being, heart, mind, soul, body. And so that's kind of the definition. So for a lot of us, I go, oh, wow, that's kind of a high bar for talking about an
Yeah.
appreciation moment. And I would just say, well, go back to your anniversaries if you're married, or you're with a special person, birthdays, holidays,
Yeah.
gifts, and vacations, things like that. And those usually have high moments where those are the things that you talk about with friends and family. Oh, remember that time? That's likely an
Yeah.
appreciation moment. And
Yeah.
so to recall that moment and to say, what did I see? What was
Mhm.
going on around me? What colors did I see? Uh, what what was the flora, the fauna, the sky, the clouds? Were there people? Was it a quiet uh,
Mhm.
solitude type of place, or was there a big crowd with joy that was festive? So you're kind of describing 5 things that would describe
Mhm.
what you saw.
Yeah.
And then from there, maybe 3 things that would describe what you heard. It was
Mhm.
the roar of the sea, It was the birds in the trees. Maybe it was the wind whistling
Mm,
through the underbrush, but you're recalling what you saw, what you heard, possibly what you smelled or tasted. That might be part of the experience. And then lastly, what you felt viscerally. How did you feel in your body?
yeah.
And so that takes care of the senses. And then you want to add on top of that, and why was that special to you?
Mm,
Why was that such a memorable time?
yeah.
And so that's kind of the anatomy of the appreciation moment, but it becomes an appreciation story when you can take a minute or two and tell a friend or tell a family member, tell a colleague, and
Yeah.
now you're reliving it and you're
Mm,
opening up those relational circuits.
yes.
You're if they were dim, they're going to be brighter, but also you are also affecting the person that you're talking to. So
Yeah.
they too become more relational as you share this appreciation moment with them.
Yeah. Yeah, I love how you break it down, and how you differentiated gratitude versus appreciation. Because when I think about gratitude and, just being grateful, that could be something just cognitively that we know. And one of my passions is to connect what's cognitive, what we know, with who we are. And your appreciation moments and what you've taught me has helped me be able to move out of the survival brain and this knowing everything, but my life is not backing it. And these are practical steps that you've broken down in the book. So I'm so grateful for that. And I know there's been challenges for people to even uh, move out of the survival mode that you mentioned in the book. So what advice would you give someone who struggles to get out the survival mode into a relational appreciative state? Maybe you can describe what does that mean even to live in a survival mode? And what would it look different when we are living in this relational joy infused, appreciative mode?
Sure, sure. I think the mode that we don't want to be in, some people call it the us and them mode, the
Mm,
mode of separation, the mode of some call it enemy mode, where everyone in all situations pose some kind of potential threat. And so we kind of have our radar up for how is this situation potentially threatening to me? And it just shuts down our relational circuits. And so what I've experienced in working with many other people one-on-one with this is that sometimes they're so shut down that I say, well, let's get together and we'll just take 5 minutes and I'll share an appreciation moment and you share an appreciation moment. And they'll say, I don't have any. I'm like, okay, you're 47 years old. You've had lots of birthdays, lots of holidays. Nah, nah. And I've learned to accept they have thousands of them, but they don't have access to them in that state. So often what I'll say, okay, well, how about this? Just sit and if you could attentively listen to me and I'll share a couple appreciation moments back to back. And it's amazing how that starts to open them up and maybe halfway through the second one their hand is up, I have one when you finish. Now, something's come to mind. And then of course, that's wonderful. So I'm the most attentive listener they'll ever have. And when they share their appreciation moment, I don't interrupt. I'm full of eye contact and full attention. And then when it's over, I can share about how that appreciation moment has blessed me, how it's impacted me, and I'm thankful for it. And I'm going to be different. And that just tends to open up people to, wow, my experiences are not just good for me, they're good for others. And that remembering of one appreciation moment now reminds them of two others. And
yeah.
if they start to tell it, it will remind them of three others. And that's how I see people go from a place of kind of the us and them or the stuck mode to a little trickle, a little stream, and all of a sudden starts building on itself.
Absolutely. I thank you. Thank you so much for explaining that so well. I think practically it's really helped me just kind of erase that us and them mentality, especially when I know for me, if I feel a threat, that is indication that I need a moment to grab onto one of those appreciation moments. so that I can access my relational circuits, especially with people that maybe I feel has hurt me or people that I don't trust. It's easy because our brains are wired to have negative biases stuck. So survival brain is all about protecting ourselves. And it's actually a lie. It says the enemy roams around trying to deceive us. He's the deceiver. And God wants us to love. God wants us to forgive. God doesn't want us to walk around, like you said, in enemy mode. And so this appreciation, the step of appreciation moments is it's God's way of helping us access his love by being able to have memories even of that person. Like if what I found is the people that have hurt me, I sit down and write down all the special moments that I've had with them and kind of create an appreciation story about them. And I found that when I'm with them, the hurt or the fear, all that is melted away. So thank you so much for this practical tool. And so I want to move into just how do we develop appreciation in community? Because in your article in my book, you talk about sharing appreciation stories as a new way of fellowshipping. So how can individuals or churches implement this practice and what benefits might they see?
Sure. Yeah, that it really is a different way of fellowshipping because if you think about kind of the culture that we're in, the society that we're in, even globally, with mass media and streaming services, there's such a dearth of bad news,
Mhm.
of be fearful of this, and can you believe that that happened? That can make its way into our fellowship because we're saturated by that.
Right.
But one of the things that we do in one of my small groups is as soon as we gather, whether we're gathering on Zoom or in person, we'll go around and check in. What's one word that describes how you're feeling today? That's kind of our instant hospitality to be able to say you're welcomed here. You don't have to be super fired up. You can be low, but you're still welcomed however you are. And then we may go around and each share an appreciation story, 2 minutes each. And sometimes I have to have a little timer because people really get into their stories.
Right.
Um, and if it's a larger group, maybe just a couple people can share. And sometimes online on Zoom, we've just gone into breakout rooms and
Mhm.
shared two by two and then come back together as a whole. And I've never failed to see the whole spirit and
Mhm.
attitude and temperament of the group change. Even if it was good, it's at a higher level of good
Yeah.
after they've shared it and listened to appreciation stories.
Yes, yes. What a practical way to infuse joy in our fellowship. So thank you for that. And I also want to ask you about this daily, what are some simple ways our listeners or our readers of our book can start incorporating appreciation into their day-to-day lives, especially during those stressful times? How can we access joy and through appreciation?
Yeah. I think that's such a great question because we don't really know what the day is going to bring.
Mhm.
And sometimes, if we're surprised by something negative, we're so startled that we're kind of out of our mode. So, having a running start, having practiced appreciation moments in good times, make them more accessible during times of stress. For me, I've done things like put an alarm on my phone at lunchtime to say, oh, just remember an appreciation moment. As I said earlier, sometimes I get with friends and you can just make an agreement with a friend for the next week or two. Hey, let's just talk for 5 minutes and each share an
Yeah.
appreciation moment. I personally have a 30-day planner, and each
Mhm.
page of the planner on the top left portion are three blank spaces for me to write down my most recent appreciation moments. And my
Wow.
goal is that they will be from yesterday. But
Yeah.
if yesterday was a challenging day and I can't really access that, then I'll say, well, what are the most recent ones? And they're always written in the previous
Mhm.
days in the planner. So I'll pull those forward and think those through. So that's how I practically
Yeah.
start my day,
Yeah.
um, with appreciation to just make me relatable to God and relatable to my family and to my coworkers and the community.
Yeah. What a beautiful practical challenge just to even as we start our day to have a journal where the top part, because sometimes when we wake up in the morning and we're sitting and ready to pray, I know we need to say thank you, but just doing the practice of appreciation. Would you be willing to share one of your appreciation moments just so that our audience can understand how simple it is and yet easy to implement, because sometimes we might make things more complicated than it is.
Sure, sure. I have one that I call Ventura Highway. I always like to give them a title.
Yeah.
So I live in the Pasadena area and I drive to the western part of Los Angeles County each
Mhm.
morning for work. And I was driving one time and I was just continuing a prayer that I had had from earlier that morning. And the thought came to mind, and I was praying about how not to be um, a people pleaser, how not to be caught up into the praise of men. And I
Mhm.
was thinking through, wow, I've kind of been trained my whole life to, get a merit badge or get a good grade or get something like that, get that positive feedback. And so I was just asking God, if I eliminate the praise of men, what does my life even look like? What's my motivation? How do I go forward? And I'm still driving, down the Ventura Freeway, trying to get to work. And this thought hit me of all these memories of the most amazing times in my life and how I had not even prayed for these moments. Many of these moments, I didn't even know they existed until God brought them to me. Like I
Mhm.
didn't even know my wife was a person until God brought her to me, and so many times. And I just, one started to repeat after the other, and it became emotionally overwhelming. I felt the tears welling up in my eyes of just gratitude of how I didn't even know to ask for some of the best things that have ever come in my life. And that gave me such great confidence
Yeah.
that God was going to bless me in the future. And so
Mhm.
I'm driving, I've got tears rolling down my eyes. And one of my last thoughts in that appreciation moment is, uh, God, I can't have appreciation moments like this. It's dangerous on the road. But it just is one of those favorite memories
Yeah.
of mine. I can just see it now. The hills on either side, the highway in front, the dim light of the morning, and just the image of no praise and how I kind of had this image of a tumbleweed kind of Western motif, all dry, and then when that all those memories of all the goodness of God came flooding in on me, my heart was just so immediately settled with peace and confidence.
Yeah. That is so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that personal
Wonderful.
story
Thank you
because
for asking. Yeah,
yeah, it really brings to life how to practice that scripture says, fix your mind on things above. And so when we do that, it's not just we feel the joy. Joy is infused in our life. So I love how you make these things practical. So I have a few more questions if you don't mind.
sure. Okay.
So in my book Sparkle, I focus on creating this joy-infused life. So how do you see appreciation moments contributing to a life filled with joy? How can someone who feels stuck in their circumstances, who's not able to access joy, have use appreciation as a way to infuse joy?
Yeah, I think faith and hope and joy really go together in a major way. And, faith is so much is our outlook on what's going to transpire in our life. Are we safe? Will we be provided for? Will we be loved? Will we belong? And so the two sides of faith that I see is one, there's everything has an object. Our faith has an object. And if that's God, what do we think about God? Is God there for us? Is he reliable?
Mm.
Will he come through? Is he strong enough? Does he even see us to be prompted to do something? And in appreciation moments, you're constantly being reminded of these good gifts from God. That even when you didn't ask, even when it was well beyond your power to act, God just kept giving and giving and giving and giving. And so for me personally, it started to shift my whole sense of my own personal history
Yeah.
because my own personal history was I used to tell my story like, man, I've taken some really difficult shots in life. I've taken some blows. I've been knocked down, but I'm the kind of guy who gets up when he gets knocked down. So that was kind of my way of telling my story. And so if you got to know Byron, you always got to know these things that knocked him down, but he got back up. But with appreciation moments, maybe there were like a half a dozen of these difficult moments that I kept recalling. But as my appreciation moments went from 10 to 20 to hundreds of appreciation moments, I just saw it as like these six little difficult moments and then this torrent of rain of appreciation moments just flooding the whole situation. And it kind of moved my heart to say, well, I'm not that guy. I'm not that guy who's going to focus on six difficult things when God has blessed me with hundreds and thousands of just amazing moments. And so it started, Pam, to change how I saw my own history. And so that brought me just great joy to know that I was loved that well, loved that strongly, loved that unconditionally. And so my faith increased that this is the God, this is what God is like, and that I can really trust him. I can lean on him. I can just plop down and he's there to support me. And that type of relief just released the joy of not having to, carry all of life's burdens by myself.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. You just brought to life what counting our blessings, actually practicing it looks like and feeling it. So that leads me to the whole concept of building resilience. So in your article, you highlight how appreciation builds resilience in community. Can you share an example of where you've seen this transformation happen?
Oh, absolutely. Dear friend that I was working with, actually, I was introduced to him by another friend. He told me, he's having some real difficult times and maybe you can help him out. And we got on the phone and we started talking and found out that he had some neurological issues, some other health issues. He had some phobia, some difficulty just getting in the car and driving to do everyday tasks. Had developed a fear of flying and had some back issues. And so he had gone all over the place. He had spent tens of thousands of dollars trying to get some answer, some kind of relief. And so when we first got introduced on the phone, I said, okay, let's set up for a week and we'll just share appreciation moments each morning. And you could just hear the silence on the other side of the phone. And he would say, appreciation moments. I don't, okay, we'll try it. So his confidence in what was going to happen was pretty low, but he was willing to try whatever. And I can't say that it happened in just a week. What happened in a week was he was persuaded that this appreciation moment sharing was helpful to him. And over the course of a little bit longer period of time, he wound up driving all the way across the country. His fear of driving to different locations was gone. His health improved. He was able to fly back and forth from the East Coast to the West Coast in a way that he hadn't done in years. And probably most important to him, he had an estranged relationship with a family member that was just so dear to him. It was just crushingly painful.
Mm.
And because of appreciation moments, he started showing up differently in that relationship. And that started to persuade the family member that things could be different than they were. And I got a call the last couple of weeks how they spent the holidays together and
Oh,
sat and chatted at the kitchen table for nearly 8 hours and was just one of the greatest times the family had ever had. And I know God is involved in a lot more than just appreciation moments, but that was a powerful demonstration of how so many, not all, but many ailments and difficulties in our lives are exacerbated because of where our minds are set. And when we set our minds on the goodness of God, it changes us not just emotionally, but physically.
yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that powerful example. And I totally believe it, just practicing appreciation moments. One of the things you've taught me was to kind of give
Mhm.
give a title. You want to talk more about how we do that and why that's important?
Oh, sure. You were mentioning earlier about being in moments where we will need to access those
Mm-hmm.
appreciation moments to
Mm-hmm.
actually, even if we're by ourselves, we need to say them out loud. And when we title them, giving them like a newspaper headline title, we need to say them out loud. And when we title them, giving them like a newspaper headline title, we need to say them out loud. And when we title them, giving them like a newspaper headline title, we need to say them out loud. And when we title them, giving them like a newspaper headline title, we need to say them out loud. And when we title them, giving them like a newspaper headline title, we need to say them out loud. And when we title them, giving them like a newspaper headline title, we need to say them out loud. And when we title them, giving them like a newspaper headline title, we need to say them out loud. And when we title them, giving them like a newspaper headline title, we need to say them out loud. And when we title them, giving them like a newspaper headline title, we need to say them out loud. And when we title them, giving them like a newspaper headline title, we need to say them out loud. And when we title them, giving them like a newspaper headline title, we need to say them out loud. And when we title them, giving them like a news like Ventura Highway or Consider the Birds of the Air, or one of my favorites is my son Blake versus Monrovia, a rival high school in our track competition.
Yes.
So it just makes it kind of headline-like and easy to retrieve. And
Yes.
so I often tell people when you're beginning this process, take your time, but try to come up with 10 appreciation moments that you can title and just remember those little headline titles. And the fact that you do that, that little title is kind of the tip of the iceberg. And if you can recall it, it brings all the rest of what you saw, what you heard, what you smelled, tasted, and felt, and why it was so important. And then all of a sudden, those um, relational circuits that were dim start brightening.
Absolutely. And that is so important. I really, really appreciate you teaching us that because for me, one of my appreciation titles is weddings. And both my children got married the same year and during the COVID. And when I think about weddings, joy just fills my heart because there's no way I could pay for two weddings in California in the same
Yes.
year. And God just worked it all out. So when I think about that, I have this infusion of joy of His providence and who He is and the blessings. So having a title for our moments when we are in stress, it helps us easily access it. So thank you for that tip. That's
Thank you.
awesome.
I'm gonna steal that as a title because my son Blake got married in the COVID
Yeah,
season. And
yeah.
yeah, and what was challenging just turned out to be just a beautiful, blessed
Yes. What a
day.
great
So
memory, right? We can
yeah,
both enjoy it.
that's right.
I know our kids are the same age, so that's
That's
awesome.
right. Yeah.
So, finally, like if you could encourage our listeners to take one small step today towards embracing appreciation and experiencing God's presence, what would it be?
Gosh, yeah, there's so many good things to do, whether it's putting an alarm to remember to do it. But maybe the very first thing is just to pick something, a great moment in your life. And even if you're by yourself after you hear this, just to think about what you saw, what you heard, what you smelled or taste, how your body felt, why it was important to you, and say that out loud to God. And
Mm.
let that be either the accelerator of your appreciation process or a great beginning for something that's bound to change your life from this day forward.
That is awesome. Thank you so much for just teaching us about appreciation, for writing about it so people have access to the practical steps. So, and I just want to kind of tie everything together. Appreciation moments are something that is our multisensory experience. Even though it's not happening today, we can actually go back to those moments of blessings. And I love how you challenge us to have at least 10 written out, stored in our memory, titled so we can access it whenever we need to. But for now, we can even just start with one. And so that's beautiful. So, how can listeners learn more about your work and start practicing appreciation? How does this um, align with what they find in the book Sparkle?
Yeah, I have what will be kind of like a weekly little notification or a bulletin or something like
Yeah,
that I'll send out.
awesome.
And they can reach me at byronparson@gmail.com, and I can give them a little blurb of what that entails and direct them further based on, what their specific interest is.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I will definitely include your email so our listeners can contact you because you're an amazing resource and spreading appreciation, breaking those barriers of the us and them mentality, training our brains to not have negativity bias. That's our default. And just such a easy, practical strategy to move from our survival brain to really experiencing a joy-infused life. So thank you so much, Byron. Thank you for your time and for doing.
Well, thank you, Pam, for the great work you've done. I love the book, the whole idea of joy infused life. It's so needed now, maybe more than ever before. And you're so open and vulnerable in the book with how God has led you through this process that I just can't imagine anyone not being profoundly blessed if they get a chance to read it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.